Hello, this is Leadership Live. I'm David Rubenstein coming to you from my home in Bethesda, Maryland. And today our special guest is Stephane Bancel, who is coming to us from his home in Boston. He is the CEO of Moderna. Welcome, Stephane. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for having me, David.
So you are one of the 5 companies that the United States government, through its National Institutes of Health, is backing to help get a COVID-19 virus prepared and distributed as soon as possible. Today, what would you say is the prospect for a vaccine to be prepared and ready for distribution sometime early next year?
So I think the chances are pretty high. I think where we got lucky, if anybody can use the word lucky for this pandemic, is that the virus is not too complicated. If you think about it, HIV was discovered in the 80s, and we still don't have a vaccine against HIV. So the scientific and medical community believes that the biology of a virus is druggable. And so I think there's a high probability that several vaccines will make it to the finish line. It could be as early as the end of the year or early next year.
What the government has done in this Operation Warp Speed is to say to 5 companies, you are ones we're picking because we think you have the best chance. I gather there's about 130 companies working on a vaccine of one type or another, but the 5 of you, which is Johnson & Johnson, which is AstraZeneca, which is working with Oxford University, Merck as well, and also Pfizer. Is that right?
Correct.
And they are the ones that are working on this. Now, those companies, Johnson & Johnson and Merck, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, they are giants in the pharmaceutical world. Moderna is a tiny company in the grand scheme of things. It's well known in the biotech world, but you're only 10 years old. So how did you get into this august company so quickly?
So the chance we have is we have a platform. If you think about the history of pharmaceutical company, every drug is a one-off. What we do at Moderna is we use messenger RNA, which is a molecule that stands between DNA in your cells and protein. And so what we can do is we can basically use instructions. So what we do is we inject in your body a set of instructions, coding for the protein of a virus to teach your immune system how to make an antibody so that if you get a natural infection later, you'll be protected. And so what we have is a platform. So this enables us to do actually 9 vaccines in the clinic before this one. And this is why we're able to grow so fast.
Okay, so the company was started 10 years ago by a number of MIT and I guess Harvard engineers and venture capitalists and so forth. You were originally recruited to go on the board of the company in 2010. And then was that really a seduction effort? They really wanted you to be the CEO. They said, come on the board. And then 1 year later, they made you the CEO. Is that what their plan was all along?
Yeah, I think it's something like that. I was at the time running a public company called bioMérieux. It's the global leader in diagnostic for infectious disease. I was before at Eli Lilly. And I had met the chairman, Noubar Afeyan of Moderna, who is also the founder and CEO of Flagship Ventures, the VC behind the company. And so he approached me and he's like, come on the board, help us out. And then as I got to see the company and to know the technology, I became to believe that it was possible that this company could be a big disruption to the entire pharmaceutical industry. And so I decided to resign from my job as CEO of bioMérieux to join Moderna as employee number 2.
Okay. So by your accent, I can tell you're not from Massachusetts originally, right?
Correct.
All right. So you moved over. You're now working in Cambridge. You're headquartered in Cambridge. But for people who don't focus on Moderna, you're small in the grand scheme of the world. But in the biotech world, you've gotten a lot of publicity because you raised more money than I think any other biotech company as a startup. And when you went public in 2018 at a valuation of $7.5 billion, the highest valuation ever for a biotech company at IPO. What was the reason that so many people were so excited about this technology? Because you had not yet had any FDA approvals for your technology.
Yes, and I think it's because investors understood the potential of a company and the fact that we are the platform. As you say, most biotech company, if they get a product moving successfully to the clinic, it is very hard for them to imagine which is the next product. In our case, because we use as raw material either human DNA or the genetic information, mRNA or DNA of a virus. So basically, we are a technology company doing biology. And so our investors understood from early days that it made no scientific sense. This will be a one drug company. It will be either thousands and thousands or zero, because it's a platform.
So it was analogized when the company was started to Microsoft. Microsoft was a platform in the software area, and then it produced different products using the basic same technique they had used. Is that fair?
It's very similar, because if you think about it, all of biology is written in the code of 4 letters. As we all know, software is 0 and 1, writes every software in the world. Well, all instructions for every protein in the world, virus, bacteria, plants, mammals, humans, of course, are written in 4 letters, the same 4 letters across all species.
These are the letters from the genes.
Correct. So what we're working on is how to make this into a drug, how to safely turn those 4 letters into an instruction that we inject in your body, so you will make the protein that we design in our factory.
Right. So for people who haven't obsessed over vaccines since they got their polio vaccine and maybe their annual flu vaccine, vaccines, basically, it's about a $35 billion annual business. About 4 companies make 80% of all the vaccines, but it's not considered to be a very profitable business generally, because you get 1 vaccine a year, and maybe maybe a lifetime, and that's not a great business. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a perception that a lot of people have. I think in vaccines, you have 3 types of vaccines, and people sometimes look at them together. You have Me Too vaccines that obviously you make no profit on or no margin on, because they are Me Too products. You have vaccine for public health, so for infectious disease in South America, in Africa, like yellow fever. You won't make a lot of money out of yellow fever because the price is very low. But then you have some very innovative vaccines that are hidden in those businesses. So a few examples. Prevnar is a vaccine against pneumonia for either very small children or the elderly. It's the #1 product of Pfizer. It's more than $6 billion of sales. It was launched in 2000, 20 years ago. I don't know the detailed numbers because I don't work at Pfizer. I'm sure it's more than 50% EBIT margin, and they're going to sell it forever.
Okay. So for people that don't really focus on vaccine manufacturing and distribution and development, let's go through this. The polio vaccine that I got when I was a little boy, that came about through the invention and discovery of Dr. Salk and also Dr. Sabin. And basically they took an inactive or inert or dead virus from the polio, and they injected it into you. That theory was, if you inject a dead or inert part of the existing virus, you will get immunity. Is that the theory? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So why don't you just do that with COVID-19? Why doesn't everybody just go get some of that inert or inactive or dead virus and inject it into people? Why is it so complicated?
So some people are trying to do that. The challenge with this old technology is, first, you have to do a lot of work to find the right dose I should give you. When you have an inactivated virus or live attenuated virus, it is not as strong. And so you have to do a lot of optimization to find how much do I give you. So I give you immunity, but I don't get you sick. And because so little is known about this new virus, it requires a lot of time to get all that work done. So it is possible to do it this way. It is just super long. The other piece too is such technology is okay for healthy people. It doesn't work well for people that are immunocompromised, like people that have a cancer, or people that have a weaker immune system, like the elderly, which are a population at high risk. So you could do it with this technology. It will take you a long time, and you will not be able to give it to everybody.
Okay, so with that technology, the polio technology, the problem is that if you don't know what the right dosage is, you could hurt somebody. And also some people might be ill already and they might not get the right dosage, they could be ill. So that's why it may not be the best for this problem. Is that right? All right, so I read that you were sitting in a beach in France and you read about this problem in China, and all of a sudden you said, this is something I need to work on. Is that more or less fair or accurate?
Yes, I was not on the beach because it was early January, but I was by the sea, yes. Okay. So I was having breakfast. I was reading like every morning the Wall Street Journal on my iPad. and I saw this article in the first days of January about this new respiratory disease in China. And because I've been working in infectious disease for 25 years, all my life, and because we have been partnering with NIAID, the division of NIH that Dr. Tony Fauci is leading, I basically sent an email to the NIAID team and say, do you know what this is? Is it even a bacteria or a virus? We didn't know at the time. And every day we learned more about it. And around January 10, the sequence of a new coronavirus was put online. And from that point on, we decided to just raise this virus and get into the clinic with a vaccine against it.
Okay, so you start working on this, and you have a lot of scientists, I know, at your company. Are all your scientists mostly in your main facility in Massachusetts?
Everybody's in Massachusetts.
Okay, you said to the scientists, all right, we're going to solve this problem. Go to work and come call me when you get the solution. Is that how that works?
It's a bit more complicated, but yes, we basically agreed that they should work on it. So what they did is with the NIAID team, they spent a few days looking at the genetic sequence of a virus online. They ran some 3D modeling to understand the structure of a protein of a virus. And then we jointly decided with NIAID what vaccine we're going to design. That took 3 days. And we never had access to the virus physically. It was all information on computers.
So NIAID is the National Institute for Allergies and Infectious Diseases. It's part of the NIH. Okay. So, all right, so you do this, you're working on this, and then all of a sudden you realize you might have a potential solution, but then you have to, the way these vaccines work is you have to then test them on animals, I guess, first. So did you test this on an animal or animals?
Yes, we tested in a few animals as we were preparing the clinical material. So we did everything on a crash course. And so we made some material to do animal testing, which takes a few days, versus making the product for the phase 1, which took us 42 days, which is actually a very short time in our industry. Dr. Tony Fauci has said that when they did the vaccine for SARS, it took them 20 months to go from the sequence of a virus to starting a clinical trial. In our case, it took us 63 days, 2 months, to go from the sequence of a virus to starting injecting a human.
So you inject in animal. What animals use? Hamsters or mice?
Mice.
Okay, so the mice, presumably they didn't die as a result of this. So the result, you said, we'll try it on humans.
Yes.
And then this is known as phase 1 when you go for humans. And you issued a report not too long ago that said, I think 8 humans had received it and they seem to be okay. Is that right?
So what we said is that we had the 45 people that went through the phase 1 were doing okay for safety. At the highest dose, a few people at the second dose has a bit of side effect. But what we said is the first 8 of the 2 lowest dose had neutralizing antibody. This is what you look for. You take the blood from people who get the vaccine, and you can look in their blood through scientific techniques to see, do we have an antibody that will bind and neutralize the virus so it cannot replicate in your body. If you think about the natural biology, David, when you get infected, you get a few copies of a virus, and the virus starts to use your own body to replicate. And when you get too much virus, what's called the viral load, you get disease. And so what you want in your body is to educate your immune system. So as soon as the virus will get into your body through natural infection, your body will be trained through vaccines to make a neutralizing antibody to bind to it so it cannot replicate.
Right. Now, is the vaccine you're developing, is it designed to prevent people from getting the virus, or to mitigate the problems if they do get it?
So the number one priority for us is to prevent disease. And in a phase 3, what we're going to measure as the primary endpoint of a phase 3 for efficacy is prevention of disease. Because if you get infection, you get virus in your body, but you get no disease, it's okay. This is the secondary endpoint. So our first objective is no disease. Our secondary objective is no infection. Because as we discussed with the FDA, we will, of course, prefer you have no infection as well. But the number one priority is to make sure you get no disease. Because, of course, people die from disease, not from infection.
Right. So you're now in phase 2. In phase 2, how many humans are involved in a phase 2 test?
Typically hundreds. In our case, 600 for this vaccine.
And where do you get these 600 people? You just call them up, or how do you get these 600 people?
So you select clinical trial sites those are posted online on the clinicaltrial.gov website, where all industry put those studies on the website run by the government. And people can either look it up and join, but all those sites that we sign up, those clinical sites, they all have database of people that usually volunteer for vaccines. A lot of time you have those around colleges, for example, or military base and so on. And they get a phone call saying, hey, we have this new vaccine. Will you be interested to participate? Where they can get briefed on the safety package of this vaccine. And they get screened, because you have always very tough criteria to make sure people are very healthy when they get into those studies.
So why does somebody volunteer for a vaccine if it's experimental? Somebody might say, I'm going to get hurt by this, or do they get compensated for doing this, or why do they do this?
Yeah, so most people, they do it for the common good. Some people, they do it like in college for a bit of money. The money is very little. It's hundreds of dollars. It is not like a bounty price or something like this. But most people do it for the right thing, to help society, to help science. If you look at the state of the industry, all the tests that is being done before starting clinical trial has allowed that, if you look at the last 5-10 years, I'm not really aware of safety issues in phase ones. It is not like it used to be 20 years ago or 30 years ago when I started in industry, where you had frequent cases of safety. Now it is very, very rare to have a serious safety event out of a phase one study. The FDA does a great job to ensure the manufacturers only take pretty safe drug into the clinic.
Now, phase 2 will be completed when?
So phase 2 should be completed in the summer in terms of the data. Those will still go for a year to have long-term safety monitoring, but the key data we're looking for safety and for efficacy, this we should have in the summer, I would say August, latest early September.
Okay, so if you get results that you're happy with, do you have to ask the FDA for permission to go to phase 3, or you just make the decision yourself?
So we need the FDA approval every time to move forward. They are the regulator to ensure safety. But what we did with the FDA, and every manufacturer does the same for this vaccine because of the pandemic, is we are moving to the next stage of testing only when we know safety. We do not wait for efficacy or for neutralizing antibodies. So the phase 3 should start in July based on the safety data of the phase 2. Like we started the phase 2 when we had the phase 1 safety. So we don't take safety risk, but we move as fast as we can because of the pandemic.
Okay, and phase 3, how many people are in phase 3?
So we agreed with the FDA, 30,000 people will be in the phase 3. It will be 50-50 placebo control, meaning half the people will get placebo, half will get the real vaccine. And we're going to look at event rate, i.e. how many people do we get infected to determine the efficacy. The 30,000 is very important because it gives us two things. First, a very big safety database, which is important because if we get approval, you could have hundreds of millions of people around the world, because many countries follow the FDA, vaccinated with this vaccine. So safety is very important. And two, we don't know where the virus is going to be in the fall. And to get efficacy, we need people infected. And so by doing so many people, we're going to basically have sites all around the US so that we don't have to be too smart. Is it going to be in Boston or New York or San Francisco or Oklahoma that you see infections, so that we have enough efficacy regardless of the geography? So we can use the safety database across the 30,000 people, but the efficacy database will be on a much smaller data set.
So phase 3, if it works well, will be completed by when?
So the best timelines, David, is we could have efficacy data by Thanksgiving. This is best timeline. It assumes 50 more things go right. So far, the team working closely with the FDA has done a great job. But it is possible that we could have that efficacy data by Thanksgiving.
Okay, let's suppose you get the efficacy data by Thanksgiving and it's good. Would the FDA say, you know what, let's go? Would they authorize you to have the vaccine out into the public then?
So the FDA will potentially, while they review the file to make sure they are comfortable with the safety and the efficacy and the manufacturing process, which is very important for safety, for the general population, they might decide, and I'm just careful with my words because the regulator decides, not the company, but they might decide to give us emergency use approval for people at very high risk, healthcare worker, the elderly, people with comorbidity, so that some people could get benefit, those with highest risk with access to the vaccine, while they review the file before you can give it to the entire population.
Okay, so there are three other aspects I want to cover. One is the manufacturing, two is the pricing, and three is the distribution. So manufacturing, well, as I understand it, the 5 companies that have been selected by the National Institutes of Health have said, you go ahead and work on this vaccine, but we'll also produce it, manufacture it while you're working on it. Is that right?
That's correct.
Right now, you're manufacturing this vaccine right now.
Correct. We are scaling up the process and making product for potential use if approved. So it's a great risk, as you can appreciate, just because we need to make as much as we can. Right. If we wait for approval or a few weeks before approval to start making it, all the capacity between now and let's say Thanksgiving will have been wasted forever.
That rarely happens. That never happened before, has it?
No, because of the financial risk companies are taking.
Okay, so you're manufacturing this now, and how many, but let's suppose the FDA says, you know what, it's okay, you can distribute this to people. How many will you likely have by the end of the year if in fact you get the approval?
So we have not communicated precise number, but we said we are on a ramp to be able, let's say by the end of Q1, to have a couple $100 million ready.
Okay. So will those go to the people in the United States first, or will they go to people all over the world? Who's going to decide who gets these?
So that's a tricky one. So what we've done is we set up a partnership with Lonza, which is one of the biggest contract manufacturer of pharmaceutical product in the world. It's a Swiss-based company. So in the US, Moderna has a factory in Massachusetts. They have a factory in New Hampshire that we are, as we speak, transferring the manufacturing process. They should be up and running in July, making their own product in their factory. So with our plant in the US and their plant in the US, we should have enough capacity to cover for the US population. What we're going to do out of Europe and out of the Swiss plant is to make product for people outside the US.
Okay, so what's it going to cost people? Who decides the pricing, and is there going to be very complicated and controversial, whatever the price is?
So the price, we are working on it as we speak, because we so far focused on getting the drug moving as fast as we could safely into the clinic and the manufacturing scale up. We're now going to get onto pricing. I think like other products before in this pandemic, diagnostics, PPEs, those need to be sold at a fair price. The manufacturers, as you can appreciate, cannot give them away in the street. Business doesn't work like that. But the manufacturer need to commit to not charge a price that is not fair versus other products. The diagnostic companies sold their test to the governments, either federal or state, or to the payer, the big insurers, at typical product they will sell over test for over virus. What we need to make sure is that the vaccine is affordable at a price range comparable to other commercial vaccines.
Now, the government has provided you with lots of money to help you move this forward. So should the government get some discount, or how will the government get compensated for what they've done to help you?
Yeah, so it's difficult for me to comment at this stage publicly on this, but that's a bit the mindset that we have, which is we want to be very fair with the taxpayer money. We're very thankful and appreciative for the help we got when it was very risky. And so we'll be happy to do what it makes to make it fair to the government.
Now, the other 4 that also are getting money from the government, do you call them up every day and trade, notes with them, or basically it's a race to the finish? For whoever gets there first is on their own?
So first, it's a race against the virus, not a race against each other, because we all care deeply to get the economy back to its foot. We really care deeply about helping people. It's a public health, disaster that we're all dealing with. The companies are talking together via the government. So there are meetings organized with the government so that we exchange all the know-how, data, and plans. But it's always coordinated by the government for obvious antitrust issues.
I see. Now, let me ask you about how you're managing this process. I assume if you're working on this virus, you can go to your office, you can do anything you want. You don't have to be at home. Is that true? Or are you working at home like everybody else?
So I'm spending a lot of time at home. I go to the office from time to time. I'm going to go back Wednesday, because we are trying to reduce risk to the team members of Moderna who have to be in the office. We have people in the labs, people in the factory who have to be at work. They cannot work from home. And so to reduce density in the office, we're asking everybody who can work from home to work from home as much as they can. I want to go regularly. I was there last week and the week before. just to be present and to talk to the team and so on. But I could bring the virus into the team and contaminate the team, which of course will be really bad.
So make sure people understand what is messenger RNA. What is unique about messenger mRNA is that it's a synthetic type of RNA you've created and you inject it into a cell, and that is therefore less dangerous than the Salk vaccine type of thing. Is that your point?
Correct. We never give you the virus. Never. What we give you is an instruction set in a molecule of messenger RNA that we inject in your muscle like a typical vaccine. Your cells are going to read that instruction, and using the natural machinery that you have in every one of your cells, David, to make your insulin and your growth hormone and your EPO and all the protein you need to be alive, your cells are going to read our instruction, which we made in our factory, and they're going to make on demand, without thinking, the protein we design. And in this vaccine, we put the S protein of a spike protein of a virus. Your body is going to make that protein without thinking. It's going to show that protein to your white blood cells, your immune system, who's going to look at it and say, this is not human.
Okay.
And so it's going to make an antibody so that it is trained. So if, David, you are infected later, your body will be trained and will be able to bind to this virus to neutralize it, so it doesn't multiply, so that you don't get sick.
All right. There's a first for everything, but this will be the first time messenger RNA has been approved by the FDA for a vaccine. Is that right, if it gets done?
That's correct. If it gets done, that will be the first time in history.
Okay. So recently, your company has received a lot of attention all over the world and so forth, and you sold some stock recently, and not you personally, but the company sold some stock and so forth. So you have enough financing, you have enough money to get to the point where you need to get?
So we have a strong balance sheet at this stage. We raise money indeed to be able to make the vaccine. So we talked about the risk before of manufacturing before launch. So we raise the money to be able to buy more equipment, to buy raw materials, to hire people, so we can start making several 100 million doses of the vaccines. We will need more capital, which can come through, purchase order that we can get around the world for this vaccine, so that we can use that cash to go back, buy more raw material and make more vaccines so it can be helpful to more people.
So what have you learned about yourself in the process of working from home and under COVID-19, and learned about your company under the enormous strain and attention you now have? You learned something about yourself that you didn't know before?
So the piece that I miss the most is the informality with my team. I find that I really have to force myself to make sure to call people. I'm an introvert by nature. And so what I love in the office is, as I go get a coffee, I walk by somebody's office, I have an idea or something I wanted to talk to them about, I knock on their door, we chat. The informality of work, I miss a lot. I think this is great technology to make sure things get done and to discuss about things that are easy and concrete, more on the execution side of things. But to create, to invent things, I find it a much more complicated process.
So I should disclose that my son-in-law did work for a while for your company. I don't own any stock, and I wish he owned more stock, but he owns some. But he did tell me when he was working there that I should invest in his company. I, of course, didn't understand what messenger RNA was, so I didn't do it. That's my big mistake. I've made a lot of mistakes like that. So let me ask you a final question now. Are you optimistic, reasonably optimistic, that sometime next year, you or one of the other companies that are working on this under the government support is likely to have a vaccine that can be distributed to people for COVID-19?
Yes, I'm cautiously optimistic, David. I think one or several other vaccines are going to make it to the finish line. The virus is not too complicated. The companies are extremely committed. The partnership with the government is exemplary between Dr. Tony Fauci's team and the FDA. The dialogue has been phenomenal. People are working 24/7. We literally get emails from the government at 2:00 in the morning. And the collaboration is wonderful. Sometimes we talk to the agency 2 or 3 times per day. Everybody wants to help. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. And I hope more than one vaccine will make it, because not one company in the world has enough capacity for the planet. So the world needs 2, 3, 4 of the vaccines to make it to the finish line.
Well, I hope you get there, and I hope I can get one of these vaccines at some point. I'll call you up and see if I can get in line to get one. But thank you very much for agreeing to be on the show, and thank you for educating people about how this process is working. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David.